Tech Nuggets, basic workstation and network diagnostic tools. Today we're going to talk about Diag and Nslookup. And they're very similar utilities. They do very similar things. They put out very different output, and one, of course, can provide a lot more detail than the other. Diag is a tool, and Nslookup are tools that we use when we're trying to understand more about how your workstation is going to talk to the DNS server, domain name services server, to resolve names. So when I want to know what the IP address is for google.com, I will send, your machine will generate packets to the DNS server and ask that question. It's a little like doing a telephone lookup. I know your name, what's your phone number? So your machine will generate those packets and ask that question, receive an answer from the DNS server in the form of an IP address, and your machine will then use that IP address to go out and surf the web or do whatever it's going to do, because machines don't really talk to each other on host names. Google.com is host name. They talk to each other via IP addresses. So there has to be some way to resolve the name to an IP address. And Diag and Nslookup are utilities that we can use to do that kind of thing, where we can go and ask the questions and see the answers. And we can do the reverse, where I've got an IP address and I want to know what name it goes with. It'd be like having a phone number and you're trying to look up somebody's name. Diag is the big brother of Nslookup. Nslookup stands for Name Server Lookup, where we're looking at it, and it is in Windows. You can install it in Linux, but it really does some basic ask it a question, give it an answer kind of stuff. And in some ways that's kind of nice, where you just ask it some basic questions, get some basic answers. Diag, on the other hand, is the big brother, and it can be installed in Linux and Windows, and you can ask it a whole wide variety of questions about name servers and the types of records that it has and what types of different things you can get at it. And in the video, I will go over both Diag and Nslookup on different platforms and talk more about the output that comes from each of them to try to compare them so that you can see that the output from Nslookup is very similar to the output from Diag. The next two tools we're going to talk about are going to be Diag and Nslookup. And they do very similar things. Diag tends to give a bunch more information. So we're actually going to look at Nslookup first to just get the general gist of the idea, and then we'll go look at Diag and try to parse out what it's doing. There are a number of online tutorials that will go through the output of Diag, so if you're interested in what Diag does, it does a variety of really interesting things. You might need to go exercise your Google foo and look around on the internet and try that out. We've been talking a bunch about host names and DNS lookups and things like that. A host name like google.com, we use a DNS server, domain name services, to do that resolution between google.com and whatever its IP address might be. That's how we look those things up. We go from a human readable context to an IP address that really is what the machine uses. And sometimes we want to know, what's the machine think it's talking to? Why am I seeing this IP address in my output? And Nslookup and Diag will give that information. We'll go interrogate the DNS server and answer those questions. So let's show that Nslookup and google.com, and we'll see that it goes off to my university's name server, which is this IP address and its name, and it will give a non-authoritative answer, which means, hey, I went and looked it up for you, but this is the answer I got. I'm not sure if it's right or not because I don't own this record, but it's the answer I got, and it will show it to you. So we can see it gives a v6 address for IPv6. We also get a v4 address for IPv4. We can do things like this. And we can ask it those kind of questions where it'll say, hey, what do you know about this? And it'll go back and resolve that in a reverse lookup. So it's like having a phone number and going to find out who has it. It's the same kind of deal. If we were to do this with things like, we would get an authoritative answer. And it's kind of non-intuitive, but since it doesn't say non-authoritative, I realize that's a double negative. It doesn't say non-authoritative. That means it is authoritative, and that means that my local DNS server here owns that record and hosts that record and is handing out that answer to others that will ask for it. DNS is a distributed system, so everybody has to go ask for the owner of who is all that kind of stuff. And we will find a similar tool over here in Linux called Dig. Dig has a lot of different options, and its output is a little more arcane. As you can see, you get a bit more, but we learn that it's an A record, which is just your standard record. There are lots of different other kinds of records that you can ask for, and we get an IP address. You'll notice we did not get the IPv6 lookup. There are ways to get Dig to spit out IPv6. They're called quad A records because in this field 4 A's instead of 1. And we can get it to show us a variety of other things. In this case, all I asked for was the basics. So we'll go and ask for that kind of stuff. We can do a reverse lookup. Oops, no, sorry. We have to use Command Option -X, which will do a reverse lookup. And there you go. You can see we got DNS.Google, and it does a reverse. PTRs or reverse lookup records.